Hello, and welcome to Escaping Dystopia. I'm your host. My name is Roy. We're going to talk about a few things this evening, as we do every time that we do the show. Let me run through them real quick, and then we'll get started. If you got anything you'd like to add, as always, feel free to chime in. Been a couple weeks, so, a couple weeks. It's nice to take a little break. What's up, Joe? Oh no! Boom. All right. Like I said, our whole production value here, really pretty much off the charts, folks. That's how we do things. That was our special effects we were going to save for later. Let me go through what we're going to talk about tonight real quick. First off, our president is the commander-in-chief of our armed forces. We've had some losses. We're going to talk a little bit about some of that. Tax reform, big thing coming up. They're trying to do. We'll bring you the latest on what's going on with the reform of the taxes. The ACA Sabotage. Coming on, it's a sabotage. They're doing a number of things to try and undercut ACA. We'll talk about a couple of those. I'm going to do a little bit about Harvey Weinstein, Fox News and Trump, and sexual assault and harassment. I think a lot of other people have done a lot better stuff than I can say about that, but whatever. We'll put in a couple bits on that one. And then a little bit about the threats to crack down on the media, some of the continued gay rights that are under attack. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on under the radar of things like the other thing I was going to talk about, some of the NFL protests. They're making me crazy. Yeah, it's been just these weird, the Trump thing where he can just kind of say silly, stupid things on the Twitter, and that just distracts people. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about some of those distractions, as it were, because of how they work and what they work on. A little bit more about the update on some of the Russia stuff. So there's actually quite a bit to talk about tonight. We'll try and go quick. We had the first month of job losses. This kind of gets me back into... We'll talk about this later. In like 83 months, I think, which, right? Crazy eye time. Sorry. I have too much fun with that stuff. I think that's actually a pretty big deal. The direct result of this was the hurricanes and that, but from what I'm told to be a little bit facetious, they're just a completely natural phenomenon, right? So there's nothing weird about that. So why should we have job losses this year with a month? But anyway, we did. And that's kind of the gross thing. We'll see if they do an adjustment later, which is pretty normal about that kind of stuff. Because one of the reasons why you have the job losses is places that are really hurt by big disasters aren't able to actually report on all the stuff. And so they miss deadlines for reporting, so estimates come in. Anyway. And then a couple science bits near the end, which I talked about earlier, wrote about. So on this thing that's been going on, and like I said, I haven't been here for a couple weeks, so it's been a little while. So if there's other stuff that you would like to talk about, feel free, as always, to chime in. This is supposed to be, in addition to our crazy graphics and cool stuff, an interactive program. So feel free, at least while we're live and stuff. And then, of course, the other days we get to talk about other things. So we're back into this really horrible kind of he said, she said situation where nobody's sure what's really going on. So a couple days ago, the story comes out. This actually goes back to, I believe it was the 4th of October, where there was an ambush for a convoy in Niger, where 4 Green Berets who were there doing something, I'm not sure precisely what, and let me cut that off. It's not coming up, so I can change it right now, so you'll have to excuse my silliness for the moment, but I don't know. Anyway, And they were ambushed, and 4 American soldiers died in the ambush. This, again, happened a couple weeks ago. Now, actually, today being the 18th, it was, I think, 2 weeks ago. And there hadn't really been much public comment from the administration regarding this. So, the story goes, apparently there's a congresswoman, I guess, who was with the family or near him, and apparently when Trump called to offer quote-unquote condolences, there was something said along the lines of, well, he signed up, he knew this could have happened when he signed up. I know it doesn't make it feel any better, but essentially having some what would be considered rather insensitive comments. The story was confirmed by the mother, and then meanwhile this morning Fox and Friends went after the congresswoman who had brought it up, which means that our president then retweeted something from that. So this is where kind of you get all this thing coming. What also happened while this was going on, and why this whole story is blown up a little bit, because one of the ways that our current president tried to cover for his own inaction here was by doing really just this nasty slander on Obama, on our previous president. And it's one of those things that's really it's after a while it just gets really kind of disgusting to me to see this kind of thing happen all the time and not be called out for precisely what it is, which is one, it makes my just eyes boil. I'd turn this thing off if the thing was working, but it's not. So you're stuck with it just like I am. So he basically claimed, because he doesn't know any better, I don't know, I heard somebody told me that Obama, never called anybody. The person who told him that actually is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, was the source on that. That, of course, is not true. It's one of those lies that the right wing tells itself. There's literally pictures of this. He cited, and this is probably one of the more disgusting parts of the whole thing, is he cited General Kelly, John Kelly, his current chief of staff's son's death, as an example for Obama being heartless about this. The thing that's difficult about this, and this is what's also come out in the last couple of days, apparently the Kellys were invited to the White House itself personally and sat at a table with the First Lady, according to just some of the public records about this. So it's one of those things where you have this guy who just has no shame and is plenty willing to drag his own chief of staff family into this while degrading other families. Another story came out, 2 more. One, apparently in one of his conversations, he had promised a family that he'd send him a check for $25,000. That didn't happen until today, when the stories ran about the fact that he had not done it. This is not an uncommon thing, by the way, with him promising checks. There was another family where they were told to wait by the phone, that the president was going to call, and then he didn't, and never did. And this is after, right, he's been making these claims that he calls everybody and all the time. And you'll notice a certain similarity in the people that he doesn't really give that much respect to. And it's such a pattern that once you start to see it, you'll see it pop up all over the place. He has a real problem offering respect about the lives of black Americans, and there's really just no way around it at this point. I've brought this up a few times, but it's to see it happen in this kind of context where, on the one side, this again, and the thing that kills me about it too is this guy is just a straight up draft dodger, and this is then to come around here and to push this nationalist stuff because he knows it sells so well. The complete and utter lack of shame is a bit jarring, right? And I hope it continues to, it's still making my eyes pop out because I can't turn it off. I think it should continue to shock us forever. I think throughout history, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this record a little bit is the continually shocking nature of how crass this joke of a man is. We'll see how much this latest episode of him being a completely heartless asshole actually affects him. Again, there's a certain element of strategy to some of the way they do this, and I will talk about this a little bit later, but it's just sucks to keep saying this. All right, so on to something really more fun and interesting than the president of our country disrespecting the people who give their lives for it. Tax reform, which is always a fun thing. So this is going to be their latest big thing after the utter failure that was the Republicans on health care. There was a few stories that came out again today, so this is kind of the latest on this, where the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, he of the wife with the impeccable fashion sense and taste and questionable airline habits, shall we say. So anyway, he came out and said, it turns out that we can't. He had before they started this back in March, and I follow tax stuff because it's actually terribly important for how our country works. But they basically started saying that, oh no, this isn't going to be a tax cut for the wealthy. This is going to be a middle class tax cut. We're doing this for workers to, get money back into people's pockets. So now it's changed to, the way that the money is, we can't really give a tax cut without giving a lot of it to the wealthy, and it's not really our fault. It's just the way it is. And meanwhile, they're continuing to sell the estate tax repeal as not an issue of giving tremendous amounts of money to already very wealthy families, but as just an issue of fairness. It's not like, it has nothing to do with the money. It's just fair. It's not fair to... So they have to have the estate tax repeal in this, which there's no way you can do that. It applies to so few people already because it keeps going up. It's like $11 million now for a married couple, and that's in today's dollars. It's only if you have assets above that the tax begins to kick in. So if you have that $12 million inheritance, you get the $11 million minus that last million is taxed at 35, I think, percent is all it is right now. They want to get rid of that, so those 500 million and those billion-dollar fortunes paid zero taxes. So anyway, so they're trying to sell that. If they wanted to do a tax cut, and I've mentioned this a couple times, that was mainly for workers and really did kind of stimulate and get money into the economy, you do what they did during the ACA, during the stimulus package when we were fighting to get out of our economic recession. That was a payroll tax cut. So and for those who are unaware, the way that works, that's actually the money that's earned income, as opposed to unearned income, which is where the vast majority of the wealthy money comes from, through things that you don't actually have to go and work for. Somebody sends you a check because you own some money and own some assets, and then sold them or moved them or got dividends. Anyway, so if you want to actually stimulate the economy, the earned income is where you have payroll taxes, and that's where your Social Security taxes came from. And that was the tax that was cut by 2% by Obama for, I think it was just 2 years. And it was one of those things, I remember when it was expiring and the Democrats were laughing because, hey, we finally found a tax cut that Republicans don't like. And so they let that expire. But if they wanted to do that and make that a core element of the tax reform package, you could do that. That's not what they're doing. This is a Republican tax package. So I think ultimately it's going to fail because I don't think the Republicans are able to govern. I think they've made that clear now with the way that they're doing the healthcare stuff. Which brings us to the next thing, the ACA Sabotage. So the latest part has been where it's a little bit technical, but essentially the payments that are going to hospitals and doctors from insurers will continue to happen, but reimbursements to those insurers from the government is going to stop. And that's why the president was kind of calling it a bailout, but then also calling it, some good... rational, a good fix, because our president has no idea how this stuff works. And in hearing him talk about it, and this is what happened in the last couple of days, he contradicted himself after saying that we're not going to make these payments. And then he said, I support these people who are trying to fix this and do a legislative fix for it. And then later came out and said, no, I don't agree with that. I don't like him there. I saw him, and he's done the same thing on drugs, on pharmaceutical drugs. And I saw this the other day during one of his rambling press conferences. And he was talking about how he wants to bring drug prices down like they are in other countries where they're negotiated by national healthcare systems, and they get way better prices, and they're way better negotiators than us, and we pay so much that they get them for free, and they're like, well, and it's like, well, again, the drug companies aren't going to sell to somebody that they're not actually making money off of, so it doesn't make sense that they're not, and it's like, well, we're just subsidizing them. Well, no, actually, we're just making huge profits for them. It's not like we're making money here, but we're losing money there, so we'll keep selling there because we have to. No, they don't have to sell anywhere. That's the fun thing about that stuff. They don't have to. Anyway, so he doesn't understand how a lot of this stuff works. I've mentioned this a few times, and I wish journalists would start to pick up on this concept. Just ask him to explain something, because he just does not understand how things work. He knows how to say certain words and put them in certain order, but the logic behind how things function is really, it's so bad. There's a clip of him, and I saw this, I posted this a little while ago. He literally can't do like basic math. And that, to me, that's a little bit of a problem. And you keep seeing these stories about how people deal with him, and the inability to do math is just not, it's one of those things, especially for someone at that level of decision making, not being able to in your head kind of understand what numbers are bigger than other numbers. There's a reason why he got out of real estate and went into acting after the bankruptcy. Anyway, so it's still crazy surreal for me that this thing is still going. The bargain, there's going to be a couple more books coming out, and hopefully we'll see how much play that gets on just the I guess that was actually the cover of Newsweek, I guess, this week, about just the deal with the devil that the Republicans are making and how it's really just gonna kill him. I think it is. Speaking of which, it brings us to our next thing. With Harvey Weinstein, Fox News, and Trump. I bring up all of these because this isn't, again, like I said, this isn't really my thing to go on. I don't want to explain to everybody from the man's point of view. The culture of sexual harassment in particular industries, and these ones in particular, where you have the politics and then you've got entertainment and also entertainment. That's one of the things when Trump was bragging about sexually assaulting women on tape, being the counterintelligence genius that he is. He talked about, being a star and using in that kind of power and how they let you do anything. And you see with a lot of the people talking about the Weinstein experiences, and I've read a few of the articles, and I mean, this is the textbook horrible kinds of things, these situations that are just impossible to deal with, and no one should ever have to, but again, that's the reality that we live in. I don't know where to really go on this one for me. It's one of those things where I grew up with, and I've learned this doesn't count at all for anything, but anyway, I had, 3 sisters and an older brother and a single mom for a while, and so after a while it was really just a single mom and a stepdad who was kind of there, and then 3 sisters and me, so none of them are what I would call timid flowers. So for me, the notion and concept of respect for women was learned and understood at a very young age, and even going through a lot of this stuff, I've always tried to conduct myself in a pretty good manner and try and in the way I can try and be an example for that. I don't let that kind of stuff go on around me or happen or endorse it or think it's funny when people try and joke about it. Called out a few people a few times over the years. Certainly not perfect in that regard, I don't think. I mean, there's one of those things where, and I've seen a lot of the, I too do this kind of stuff and those posts going around, and I don't know, to the degree, like if I don't know anybody's perfect on anything. So certainly not perfect, but try and learn and do the right thing. And the most important thing, I think, is to listen. Not that you can do that during a talk show, right? I'm going to sit here and listen to no one talking. I could have somebody else on to talk about it, but that would be a different show. I'll probably link to some good stuff. I found some good writing about it, but the thing that I think is good is when this stuff is exposed, and why it is because I think it's changing. I do think it's changing. I don't think and the other one I probably should have thrown in here was Cosby, although that really just goes into a criminal area. I think he's one of the ones that definitely should end up in jail after all this. The thing that's a little bit more difficult about some of the other what is it? I guess it's almost there's a difficult thing talking about this and I think for a lot of men too, the distinction between that criminal and civil kind of sexual assault, and I hope we don't get too far into blurring that line between those two, because if you make one seem like the other, one of those is, I don't know, I don't want to see that line blurred between some of the stuff that's happened here, and I hate to, I don't know, being a little vague so I don't get in too much trouble. How can you do that? The thing that's tough about reading a lot of these stories about Weinstein and what he did is using that power and knowing that he had something that they wanted and they had something that he wanted, and making that deal very, very aggressively. And that's what he did for a living, was making those deals. And now you see how many times that he fucked him over. And now you are seeing, hopefully we'll see how far, and hopefully the fall is coming hard and fast, and hopefully he hits the ground and splatters in a sense. That's what we'd like to see as more examples made. You have stuff like Ailes, who's already gone, and Weinstein, who's down. For those who don't know, Roger Ailes ran Fox News, which, again, so you had Fox where him and Bill O'Reilly, who was one of the most powerful, popular people on TV, fired for sexual harassment. And we have a president who is on camera doing this on tape. It's obviously a huge problem that our country, and I would love to have seen, that's why it sucks so bad to have this douchebag win instead of having a woman. And what's even, you see with the attacks on Hillary coming out, and I didn't mean to go into this, but I've had to deal with this a few times over the last few weeks, that whole blaming women for what men do thing, it's another aspect of it. And you see in a lot of the responses why women don't bring it up, because of the questions that come up. And there have been a few kind of, well, if you do say it, well, then this. If you don't, then that. And if you say that, then this and the other. And, of course, knowing some people have to deal with this, it's not a small bullshit thing. It's real. And it happens. And the only way I can fix it is to not do it, not condone it, and provide sympathy and I don't know, empathy and action for those who have to deal with this. And try and stamp it out and make it even more of an exception so it becomes even more apparent. Because the way that people get away with this is when it's a culture thing. And the way that it goes on for long enough is that, it's allowed. And even now, we'll see how much that changes. But that is a culture that's changing. We do have a culture that is changing. And I think there are very, very different attitudes about that. Well, that's just the way it was back then. You know, it's not then anymore, guys. You can't do that. And now you got to pay the piper. So we'll see how far he has to pay for this piper, but hopefully it's all the way back to... It's not Nottingham, is it? Where's the Pied Piper of Lilliput? Nope. I'll remember it later. Probably sometime tonight. So anyway, back to some fun stuff real quick. We had a threat a little while back, and this is actually a bigger story. And this is what's so odd about having a president who's just a complete, out-of-control, crazy man. Why isn't the Senate Intel Committee looking into the fake news networks in our country to see why so much of our news is just made up, fake? This was when there was another news organization story about some of the problems and issues in the Trump administration. Again, this is coming from someone who just lies constantly, but lies constantly and claims to be, excuse me, a font of perfect and ever-flowing truth. Which again, if you probably claim to be that, they go together to a certain degree, especially when you can't back up anything with any proof ever, but claim to have proof quite a bit, which has happened a couple times. In our main stories about the other one. Literally said, I have proof. All right, let's see your proof. So anyway, I told you I had proof. That's enough. That's the proof that I told you that I had proof. We move on. All right, next thing. So our little elvish bigot that's the Attorney General of the United States, and really, again, I want to make sure that posterity knows that a lot of us did see this, has done a lot of stuff that have put gay rights under attack so much that a lot of organizations are really kind of girding for battle. And it's going to be some serious battles to see if our laws can hold up to a few men just destroying them from the top. That's actually a big part of the test that's going on for the country right now. So far we're doing okay, but that's just because we haven't really hit any problems yet. We've actually been so clean sailing. It's a little odd. Well, not odd yet. So, since I've done my last show, we actually had our little NFL Pence stunt. The Vice President of the United States did a propaganda stunt where he went to a football game that he knew he wasn't going to stay at just so he could walk out and claim to have walked out because people protested police brutality and racial inequality in the country. And again, we have this situation where the President of the United States is lying about what people are doing and why. I think part of the reason that they've picked up this issue, and I'm sure this comes from Bannon and his strategy, is because they like nothing, absolutely nothing more than the opportunity to criticize successful black men as being examples of ungrateful. You can pick a word to put in there, but that is absolutely the point of doing this. This is the way that they play identity politics, and this is why I don't really condone necessarily all of the aspects of that concept and notion, and think it can be a little bit silly as someone who generally goes against form per se. But that's what's going to happen with that kind of stuff, and that's why they do that. It really is just plain, just direct, crass political things, and then to use the flag in the same manner, and then also disrespect the families of African American servicemen who give their life, while at the same time shaming African American men for... Yeah, you start to see a pattern here that's pretty clear. Now, speaking of these kind of racial insensitivity patterns, this is precisely the angle that a lot of the Russian propaganda used. we're going to see a few more reports as more of this stuff leaks out about just exactly what they were doing, or at least what we're aware of. And a lot of the efforts were focused, and a lot of them were pretty diabolical. The kind of stuff where, like, there's some that have come out, like where they had the rallies down in Texas for, fighting against Shakira law, and we gotta all get together. Maybe we'll just secede, and essentially, and they do that in Texas, and then in some other places in the South, they'd have self-defense classes for training for black men and women to kind of build the black army. Again, to both build that concept of just racial division and strife, attacking the country along those angles. A lot of anti-government stuff. Just look at the way RT, Russia Today, and Infowars and all that treat the concept of the way our government works, and Assange, knowing that that kind of insidious, people, you think your government hates you kind of stuff really destroys the whole fabric of how a democracy works and functions, and that's how you get that kakistocracy, that rule by the worst of us, is because we think that's actually normal. So, with that, the show's about over. Sorry, it's a long, happy show tonight. There's a couple things in science that are neat that happened. I saw that Google has their Babel fish earphones. These are, everybody who's thought about sci-fi for any stretch of time over the last 40 years has thought of this, but you basically hear one language and then it spits out the other language. So kind of that instant translator kind of thing, hence the Tower of Babel fixing. This is something that looks like they have a functional product. I haven't seen a test of it, just that it was out there. Might have a follow-up on that because that seems like something neat. The other thing that happened the last couple of days was really cool. We have now the LIGO detector, the Light Interferometer Gravity Optometry. What does the LIGO stand for again? Sorry, I thought I could pull that off my head real quick. It basically is a detector of gravitational waves. Gravitational waves. Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. It has these lasers set up that go down these paths and then come back, and they're very highly calibrated and measured. So what they are measuring is the notion of really strong explosions or forces in the universe actually bend the fabric of space-time, literally bending reality a little bit. The same thing, I've talked about this before, that people experience for being close to an explosion where there's just this blast wave that pushes through all little matter. This is on an even deeper level, and one that actually doesn't really appear to have any effect on actual life. Those ones do. But, because the thing is actually pretty big. It's 4,000 meters long. So it's like 2 kilometers, straight line, lasers going back and forth. And then if they wiggle a little bit, it measures the difference. And then there's a few of them in a couple different places, and then, because they can measure these all over the place. They've had like 4 hits. One of the ones they got this last week, which is what I was going to talk about, was the collision of 2 neutron stars. For the first time, scientists have caught 2 neutron stars in the act of colliding, revealing that these strange smash-ups are the source of heavy elements such as gold and platinum. The discovery, announced Monday at a news conference and in science reports written by some 3,500 researchers, solves a long-standing mystery about the origin of these heavy elements, which are found in everything from wedding rings to cell phones to nuclear weapons. It's also a dramatic demonstration of how astrophysics is being transformed by humanity's newfound ability to detect gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of space-time that are created when massive objects spun around each other and finally collide. So we do. There's some really, really amazing science. They saw this thing happening. Basically, all of the telescopes in the world, the big ones, pointed towards it. We were lucky enough to be on the right side of the sun from where this happened. It happened like 130 million years ago. The light and the waves just hit us. Again, if the whole entire universe had exploded like a while back, we wouldn't know yet. So these two neutron stars ran into each other 130 million years ago, and now the waves are hitting us. The gamma ray burst, though, so this would be the same kind of thing as if this was oriented a different direction, and kind of if they were spinning around each other this way and hit each other, and we were above or below it, because when they hit, they shoot out the big gamma ray burst on each side. That could obliterate us. I don't know if it could from this range, but I'll have to see. I have to read up a little bit. But anyway, we did get to see the gravitational waves, and we did measure them, and pretty amazing. Pretty amazing, cool stuff. A neutron star, if you have forgotten, is one of those things that is not quite dense enough to be a black hole. It's really close, but you can still see it. But they're, what is it, like the spoonful of it weighs as much as the Earth kind of thing. Very, very dense, very, lots of energy, kick off a lot of stuff, and two of them ran into each other 130 million years ago, and we measured it in August, and so the papers are just coming out about it now. So anyway, that's cool. Humanity's actually not on a horrible, horrible path. We still have some good stuff out there, and I think we'll still be okay. Just get rid of this guy before he destroys us all, because he is just an unmitigated jackass. And with that, I shall actually get out of here and turn off the eyes, which are so much fun, I'm sure. So thanks for watching. Have a good evening, everybody. And maybe next week, we'll see. I'm trying to keep it consistent. You know how life is. People get sick and things happen and stuff. So peace out, y'all. Have a good night.